Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
And welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's face-to-face with video series, where contributors to the No BS Spiritual Book Club, that is such a mouthful, 10 Best Spiritual Books Library, share the stories behind the books that move them the most on their spiritual journey. And face-to-face with us today is Deva Premal, a woman who is beloved throughout the world for her beautiful chanting of Indian Sanskrit mantras. Before we welcome Deva, I just want to encourage you to post any questions that you might have for her in the chat window, along with your name and location as we go through the interview. And Sharon will gather them and we'll share them later on. Deva, welcome.
Hello, Sandie. Nice to see you.
Last month, as you know, we had the pleasure to sit face to face with Meetin, who of course didn't follow the rules at all, but whose interview was undoubtedly all the more fun for that. And I'm delighted to have you with us today to share a little bit about your journey and the 10 best spiritual books that have touched you the most along the way. And thank you for keeping your list to just 10 books, which I'm fascinated to see definitely seem to have a theme running through them.
Oh my God, I thought I could have gone more that way. I thought, well, let's try to bring some different things in there.
Yeah, and we'll get to uncover that. I think it will soon become evident as we get through the first two or three. Before we do that, I'm always curious to know what the selection process was like for each guest. Was it an easy task for you, or did you have to spend quite a bit of time thinking about it?
Actually, to be honest, I have hardly any time to read. I don't read very much. I have so many books I'd like to read and I don't get to them, so I don't have that much to choose from.
Well, that's good. That's good. And you're not the first person to say that, you know, life is too busy. They're not reading as many books. Mm-hmm. So the ones they do read have to be all the more compelling, I think.
Yeah.
So let's start with your first one, which is Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, which was published in 1994. And he, of course, was one of the pioneers of the life between life hypnotherapy regression books. So tell us what it was about that book that appealed to you so much.
Yeah, so I think that's also a theme that goes through the whole selection. Is I'm just really interested in Scorpio-like themes, you know. So it's death and those kind of dark and light, like, the mixture where the lightness comes into the darkness or the light comes out of the darkness, those kinds of themes. So ever since I was a teenager, I would read near-death experience books and stuff like that. And then somehow I hadn't gone there that much until our friend Shamdas left his body in 2013, suddenly with an accident, and it was a huge shock because it was the closest friend that I'd lost so sudden. And my other friend said, like, this book really helped me, this Journey of Souls book, and it was like right up my alley. It's like what I would read anyway, but it was just the right time that it came. And what I love about that book is that it's a scientist who didn't have any preconceived ideas about reincarnation or lives in between lives. He's a hypnotherapist who would help people get rid of pains or smoking or, like very, very down to earth themes. And he stumbled upon a past life in somebody's regression because he couldn't figure out the reason for that person's pain in this particular life. And then suddenly he could do the research, and he realized, wow, it's really like there was really this battle in France at that point, and this many people died and whatever, so it really was true. And then in another session, he stumbled upon a woman who suddenly said, I don't have a body, but I'm surrounded by these souls that I feel so close with, and I don't feel like with anybody that close here on earth. And suddenly I'm home, and I'm really feeling like, wow. So that totally fascinated him, and then he did these 7,000 case studies that make up that book. And basically he kind of created this map of what happens in between lives, which seem to be pretty consistent across the board of people who he doesn't influence. That's what I like when he does the session. He doesn't say, okay, you're going to now go through the tunnel, or you're now going to meet your loved ones, or he really leaves it open to see what they say. And then they say things like they all come and see a library in the end, and they see, they go through there, they see their spirit guides, and there's so many things that are happening that are congruent in all these descriptions. That is really, really very fascinating. And for me, that I can say, like, somehow ever since I read that book, I almost perceive my life here like from this viewpoint of the beyond. Somehow, like, I see everything in the context of what that could look like in the beyond, or would look, or what I imagine it to look like. I think I say this now for the whole hour that we are going to spend. All these books that I'm reading, you can't prove them. It could all be just total mind fantasy or whatever. I'm totally aware of it. I have experienced none of it. I haven't had a near-death experience personally. I know somebody who has, like a really good friend, but I haven't had one myself. And so I just feel it feels right. It makes me feel good. So that's enough, like, I might as well believe something that makes me feel good this lifetime. It brings good out in me. It brings out compassion in me, the way I see the world. It brings more compassion and understanding and peace. And that's all good enough, when I die and none of it is true, it's also fine, I mean, I know there's not going to be heaven and hell. I'm not going to go to hell. This much I'm totally 100% sure about. Yeah. And if it's all over, which some people believe, it's also fine, So I think I just want to say that once and for all, so I don't keep saying about every book. Yeah, who knows?
I love what you said, and I'm a great believer in, if it resonates with you, then you have to go with it. Because that's the ultimate authority, I think. Is your own gut. And I love that book too, and I have had a couple of regressions, and they are interested. And I've actually regressed a few people as well. Because I studied hypnotherapy. But yeah, I mean, you're right, they do give us more compassion, and they do give us a much bigger viewpoint. And I think we need that at times, especially at times like today.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I really, it just brings home that understanding again, that basically this life is not meant to be like a smooth ride. That's not really why we come here, what we come here for. And we're really meant to experience all these different dynamics, and it's not fair. It doesn't look fair in worldly human terms. It makes sense in the bigger picture, and that helps me understand, and helps me have compassion and patience, and also this feeling of, I don't know what the bigger picture is, so I can't judge it, like, yes, why that person has to act this way, because I don't know where they come from. I don't even know what their childhood was like, let alone their last life.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, we can't judge. Number 2 on your list, I love this one. I had the joy of interviewing Annie Kagan. It was The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, How My Bad Boy Brother Proved to Me There's Life After Death. And that's a quite different book, but obviously it is presenting some of the same, suggestions and beliefs and philosophies. What did you like best about that book?
I mean, the biggest insight, and I think that's basically the main thing that I took away from this book, is what I love about books and stuff. Anyway, I liked when they broaden my horizon and when they kind of really like smash belief systems, you know?
Yes, me too. Yeah.
And with that book, I had this strong belief before I read it that it's very German and very kind of righteous or something. That if somebody is going through an addiction problem, they need to learn to get off that addiction problem, and then they have transformed that particular, issue, and and so this lifetime, if they don't get through that, don't get off they might have to come back and do it again or learn a lesson again or something. I really had this kind of like, this is obviously something that needs to be healed, and this is not serving the highest good of that person, and they obviously have to come through this, and if they don't, then they kind of have failed, or I mean, this is a little bit black and white, but a little bit in that direction. So this book like opened that horizon, that her brother, he was a complete, I don't know, loser in the worldly sense. He was a drug addict, alcoholic, I think he didn't ever had a real job. He was just, until he was 60, when he was 63, when he left his body, he just didn't get it together and never came out of that, cycle of addiction or whatever. And there he is now, coming from the beyond, saying like he's a really advanced soul that just needed that experience of chaos in that way, and what it does to all the people around him who see him go through that he kind of gave himself to be part of that dynamic, that they could learn from it. So basically, just for me again, was like, what do I know? So that's basically
yeah, we do like to have our little belief systems, don't we? And then every now and then something comes along to kick us out of that one. Yeah, that is a really good book, and I know so many people have read it. So obviously it's a much more modern kind of tale as well, I think, which people like, and the very fact that Billy Fingers was such a bad boy. Number 3, Dying to Tell You, by Lisa, is it Najjar? Who is an author, psychic, medium and speaker. And the subtitle is, I believe it is, What Would the Famously Dead Have to Say from the Other Side? And I haven't read this one, but I want to, now that I've read a little bit about it. So tell us what attracted you to this one.
Yes, and Lisa is with us here today, I hear.
Hi, Lisa.
Lisa actually got in touch with us saying, I channeled this book and I listened to your music while channeling, and maybe you're interested in this book, and I'll send it to you. So that's how I came to know about it. And when I read what it was about, this book, I thought, oh, you definitely send it, I want to read this. And so basically what happened to her is that Walt Disney came to her and said, many years ago now, quite a few years ago, came to her and said, please let us, famous people who have passed on, give you messages that hopefully the humans will listen to more openly, just because it's us, because they love us or they regard us as special or whatever. And she was resistant. She didn't really want to do it. And I think it took her a year or two, and she was resisting. And then they suddenly just started coming. So all these different famous people, including Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, Marilyn Monroe, Abe Lincoln, John Lennon, George Harrison, Einstein, they just came. And and she was so innocent that she sometimes didn't even know either that they were famous or that they had died. And for example, Waylon Jennings came, and she didn't know that he had left his body, and she said, I didn't even know you were dead. And as dead as they come. Anyway, and each one has such a different take, style, flavor, and focus. Each message, some are very personal, of their personal regrets or personal transformation, or or not transformation or whatever, and some really have their mission or something they really want to bring across, which is also very much in line with what their lives were like, that same mission. Or so they're like nuggets, they're like I call them prey lines or something. You just take one and you just savor it, and you just like, oh, that's so beautiful. And in that book, Mark Twain and George Harrison mentioned our music because she was listening to it while she was channeling them while they came through, and they said, I think Mark Twain said that's beautiful and complex music to the Gayatri mantra, and also George Harrison. So we can use their endorsements.
I was going to say, yeah, put those on your website. Mark Twain loves my music. Yeah, I noticed, I had a quick look at Lisa's website, and I saw a couple of notes that said, find out why Albert Einstein changed his theory to the theory of irrelevance. Steve McQueen would give anything for another shot at living. Elvis Presley now resides in the Heartbreak Hotel, and Davy Jones is still monkeying around.
Yeah, I don't know. I had thought I have like for example, this is from Martin Luther King. Each one of you is a sacred messenger of peace. Your hands are the hands of the masters. They need you to do their work. In you, it is done. So,
That's beautiful. I was going to ask you if you have a favorite. Is that your favorite?
Elvis Presley, I really love. I don't know. There's Elvis Presley is really beautiful, but there's many, many beautiful. Elvis Presley, a little bit of Elvis Presley.
Yeah, tell us.
Make a difference in the world. It doesn't have to be the whole world. It can be one person, because that person is the world. If you could see from down there what I can see from up here, you would do kindness all day long. This kind doing has a vibration that circles the world, the entire world. Can you imagine what the world would be like if each of you did kindness? And that's really, like, I never forget that. I just really see these vibrations, always, swirling around and never ending, like they're always there. So, very, very
it's a very simple message and a very profound one, and beautiful too. Yeah, very basic one, fundamental. We all need to pay attention.
Yeah, you just need to hear in a different context, or different words, and it goes in.
Yeah. So number 4, wow, that was an interesting one to research. Bridge over the River, after-death communications of a young artist who died in World War I. And Botho Sigwart, Earl of Eulenburg, he died in 1915 when he was about 30 years old or somewhere around there, and started sending messages to his sister. That is a hard book to actually track down. And I did manage to track a copy down online, and I did manage to look at, there's loads and loads and loads of links. You can download the whole thing in individual chapters. So how did you find this one?
That somebody gave to me in a concert, because now in our Sangha people know that I'm into this. This is the book. I have it right here. It's pretty unattractive looking, pretty kind of, and it's thick, and I didn't even want to really, it's just something somebody left, and I thought we can't read it. I don't have time. And then I looked closer, and then I saw what it was. And so it's this musician who lived from 1885 to 1915 and died in World War I. And he was actually quite successful in his short life as a musician. He was a composer and a wunderkind kind of piano player, and he left his body in the war, and then, like you said, he came for 30 years. He gave messages to his siblings and his sister-in-law, I think. And he came through, and he keeps kind of saying this is not like automatic writing, it's a different process. And he always says it's a kind of a more advanced process, how they receive the messages. And it's To be honest, I haven't even read it yet. I'm still only halfway through because it's just so potent. I keep underlining things, and it's written in German, obviously, originally, and it's kind of old German, so I don't even know if it sounds that great in English. I have actually chosen one or two things to read, but that could be a little bit off-turning. But what I just love is that he is, first of all, he's a musician, so he's saying that this is a really beautiful thing. He says about music, the chief purpose is because he says, I'm here now creating more music, and I'm creating the symphonies, and they're very for a certain purpose. It's not entertainment. It's not just to listen to it. It's for a certain time to be performed or played or created. And he says the chief purpose is to conduct the attitude on earth onto a different course. This music is distributed into the most diverse spheres surrounding the world, and its influence is enormous. Perhaps you cannot properly comprehend that humanity is to become more inspirited through music, but it is so. Music is the highest art. It alone can have an indirect influence on a person. He never knows or hears anything of it, since his earthly environment fills him entirely, and yet he must listen to this voice all the same. So anyway, just all these different perspectives, or the levels of you really, that's what's so special about this book, because he started 1 month after he left his body with the messages for 40 years. So you actually get to see his whole development. Like when he first leaves his body, he says, like, please don't think about my physical body. It physically, not physically, but it hurts. Like that's what gives me pain. When you give all this attention to my physical body that's dead, and please see me as a spirit being. And then later he will say, oh, now you can do whatever you want with you can think about my physical body. I'm now advanced. It doesn't affect me anymore. Things like that. So you see, oh yeah, now I've entered a different level, So I find very intriguing. And
you know from the series that you and Riten did with the Medicine of Mantra, and anyway how much music influences us. But it's really interesting to hear that he said this, more than 100 years ago. And to think that there are compositions being created that are actually going to be like transmissions that are going to impact us in the future as well. I mean, that's quite astonishing. That's a book that would really interest me, because there's things I haven't heard before.
Yeah, I can send you. I've downloaded all the PDFs. I can send it to you.
Yeah, and I did read a little, I opened up a couple of the links, and I did read that it had been translated quite well into English. The language may be a little bit archaic, but it's understandable. Yeah, that really does sound like one that, you have by your bed and you take months and months and months to absorb it.
The first year is actually in print in English, that you can actually buy as a book, but not the whole 40 years.
Wow, what an undertaking too, to publish all of that. Amazing. Okay, number 5, The Wheel of Life, a memoir of living and dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And that was published in 1998. And of course, this was her story about her life, how she lived, and everything that she accomplished in her life, and what she's learned, giving us a lesson too. So tell us about that one for you.
It's kind of a little bit almost getting boring, all the death.
No, everybody knows that it's, mostly about death now. And I think what's interesting is you're picking so many different kinds of books about death that it does make it interesting, because we're getting different angles and perspectives.
So the reason why I read it is because we actually met Elizabeth, and she already had I don't know how many strokes she's had by that time. We saw her in Arizona in her house, and a friend of ours was friends with her. He brought us to see her, and she was grumpy as usual. She was known to be quite frank and quite, a bit like that. And first she didn't even look up, and she said, "Yeah, you can sit there, but you do," she was just watching television, and we were sitting by the side, and nothing was happening. And then Muten just took his guitar out and started playing, first, and we just started playing with each other, singing, and then she turned her television off and started listening, and then she was really into it, and we sang Shema, and Shema she loved because she was so connected to the Hopis and the Native Americans, and she actually then asked us whether we would sing that at her funeral, and we saw her 2 or 3 more times also in the old people's home that she was, and where she also left her body. She was an incredible character of no fear. I think that's what I really took from that book. She had no fear, she was so herself, and she didn't care if she was liked or not liked, and she was, with her strong Swiss accent that she kept, although she lived in America for, lived in America for 50 years or something. That was kind of really like she had a bit of a hardness about her, like a little brash, but full of heart, totally there with a compassion and real, like the way she met people who were dying, or she was just real with them, and not, oh, poor thing, she was just like, yeah, I hear you and I see you, and and I'm with you in whatever phase. She created those 5 phases of grief,
Yes.
and all that. So this book is incredibly entertaining. It's amazing what happens in her life. I had no idea she had this whole thing with her spooks, these spirits that guided her, like this. It's a really good read. So it's just very inspiring to read of somebody who's so fearless and into death. So that
and did such a wonderful thing for humanity as well. Because we need to talk about death. It's part of life.
Yeah.
And we don't. We're all so afraid of it that we avoid the subject. So, thank God for her.
Yeah. She just, it took her a long time to die, and she was not happy with that. She was really not happy with having to live through another stroke. And when she left her body, eventually we were so wanting to be there for the funeral to somehow fulfill our promise, but it was just not. We were just booked. We had a whole weekend.
Oh, that was a shame. Oh, yeah. I don't suppose Lisa Najjar has ever she's ever come forward, has she?
Come forward as what?
To speak to Lisa and pass on any messages.
That's a really good point.
Lisa will have to tell us.
Put that in the.
Okay, so let's move on to book number 6, which is Dragon Thunder, My Life with Chogyam Trungpa by Diana Mukpo. And this is published in 2008. And she ran away from a high upper class English family at the age of 16 to marry a young Tibetan Lama, which I can just imagine, as far as the upper class English are concerned, that is an absolute no-no, especially at 16. So tell us what you know about this book and how it impacted you.
I mean, I basically just read it because I was attracted to know more about Chogyam Trungpa. And
you say it better than I do.
I don't know. But, and I, as you might have noticed in my choice of books, I'm not very philosophical, so there's not really any books that are very unpractical. Like I need like a story or something, So it was nice to read a book about him and about the life, which was then it's a reflection of what he was like, and there's he was very known for his sexual freedom that he took for himself, so that was intriguing for me to know about, because he was just really completely open about it and didn't hide it, and also he was a alcoholic. He was more often drunk when he, so he was one of these crazy wisdom teachers, which Osho was and Gurdjieff was, and so it was like, how was it to be married to him? And so that's for me, that was very, very. It's just a very, opening.
What did you make of the wife?
I think she just did her best, and I think it's just hard anyway to be married to a guru and then to one who has lots of lovers, but she did great.
And she had 4 sons, and 3 of them were declared as the reincarnation of high Tibetan lamas.
Yeah, you know what, it's a little while ago, so I can't really go into details about that. I don't know, but I think, I don't know, I read it and then didn't really follow much up, but just just what I just loved is that the openness and that spirituality in this high spiritual person can have those 2 sides, and they fit in some magical way together, and they give each other juice and spice,
I think that's something that really we should, as a society, explore a little bit more, because we're also shocked when a spiritual teacher or a guru appears to behave like a human being, as if, they should be above and beyond all that, which is completely ridiculous. So I would think it would be a fascinating book to read.
Mm-hmm.
So, number 7, Dinner with Osho, Intimate Tales of 2 Women on the Path of Meditation by Savita Brandt.
Yes.
Tell us about that one, because, obviously Osho, intimately, having spent so much time with Osho.
I don't know Osho intimately, that's the thing, because I never met him personally. I've sat in his darshan, in his discourse. I was there, he was there in the front, but I've never had a talk with him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, I had no personal connection with him. So, so for me, this book was, so that's also why I didn't really put an Osho book, because all the teachings I've received from Osho, they were always in audio form, like his discourses, either while I was there or audio files. But I haven't really read many books, Osho books from A to Z, because it's just it hasn't happened. But this book I love because it gave me such a personal insight into Osho, how he was on a personal level, and also his. So there's 2 things about this book. It's actually 2 completely separate stories of Indian women who were with Osho from 1968 on, before he was known, before he had any disciples, before he was already a professor and he was already enlightened, but he wasn't. He was just starting to travel, and both of these women, one of them was really in love with him, on a very emotional level. And the other one was also a professor or scholar of some kind, and it was an intellectual connection. They had lots of discussions and stuff. And especially the one who was in love with him emotionally, he seemed to also feel feelings. He said, I have a love for you that I feel for no other, or something. There's a quote. So he also felt it, and the way he lived it so gracefully and so clean, and but not suppressing anything, and totally she was really attracted to him as a man, but she was married, and so finally, so now she's actually it happens that she's in the same room with him at night, that she stays with him overnight, and they think they're going to make love, and then she just can't, because of her conditioning and because of her husband, and it just doesn't feel right. And although it's totally not happening with her husband, he doesn't love her, but still. And Osho is very totally okay, it's absolutely this, and it's just I'd never read something like that or heard something like that about Osho. There are no women who come forward and say, "Oh, I've had sex with Osho," or he's known as the sex guru, but actually he doesn't have any, or maybe because of that, he doesn't have any scandals himself, because he didn't even ever say that he was going to be, that he was celibate, or that was the way to be. So it's very clean and very just these little sentences, these little talks, the teachings that he imparts on these women by the way he is, or they are together, or by the way their lives, he guides them, is very inspiring, because it's practical. It's like, oh yeah, and they're women, and then also to get the insight into life of Indian women in those, and like they were so courageous, early 70s, and then they wear red clothes and they wear a mala with Osho's picture around their neck, and they're in some village or city in India. They were also crazy, seen as crazy, and how that, and so it's very beautiful. I really, really loved it. It just came out just like a year or two ago, and one of her body now, one of the women, but the other one, she's still alive, and it's the first time that this is written down, that Osho was also a sexual being and had maybe a sexual relationship with somebody, although he had a consort, and we know that they were really lovers for many years. That was never, but she never wrote anything about it, or she, so it's beautiful.
Yeah, and the reviews say that Savita does a wonderful job of telling the stories of these two sexually repressed women who transcend to become true devotees. And apparently she reveals translations of Osho's talks that have never been printed in English before. So, if anyone wants to know what Osho's early days were like, this seems like a really good book to get. And it's not available on Amazon. I couldn't find it anywhere, but it is available from dancingbuddhas.in, a website. You'll find it there.
So Amazon, because I thought I saw it there. But
you saw it there? It's funny because a couple of the books that I really had to hunt, to find where I could get some research on them. They didn't show up at 2 or 3 tries on Amazon and a few other places. But I did find this one at Dancing Buddhas. So anyway, but yes, by all means, try Amazon first and see. I thought I heard Miten say, when he was talking to us a month ago, that you had lived at Osho's ashram since you were 11.
I was with Osho. I became a disciple of Osho when I was 11, and but I was still living in Germany, going to school.
Ah, okay. So you weren't actually living in India at the ashram. That's why I thought that you knew him really well.
No, at 17 I went for the first time, and then I lived there for 3 years, and then for 10 years on and off. But I was just one of the many people. I didn't have a personal connection.
Right. Okay. So number 8, The Gift by Hafiz, and it's translated by Daniel Ladinsky. And this book was chosen by Elizabeth Gilbert as one of her 10 favourite books. So you're in great company there. Tell us about this one and its impact on you.
Yes, I mean, Hafiz is a Persian poet. I always forget, I think 13th or 14th century poet. He often is named in the same breath as Rumi. And Rumi is so famous and everybody knows Rumi, and Hafiz, I think, is now also becoming more and more known. But for some reason, Hafiz speaks to me even more than Rumi. Somehow it just lands. And Daniel Ladinsky, he made these translations quite modern. So sometimes it's a bit kind of, I think it's mostly really good. The other day there was one, it had sandwich in it, and that was a bit kind of funny for me. But I just have to read you this one. It's called Tripping Over Joy. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made a fantastic move. That the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. So it's basically saying the same message, but in beautiful poetry and beautiful imagery, and it's also one of those you can just read one poem and just.
Yeah, I was intrigued when I read that Daniel Ladinsky has said that his work with Hafiz is an attempt to do the impossible, to render light into words, to make the luminous resonance of God tangible to our finite senses. Wow, what a task. Okay, so number 10. Now this is quite different than everything else that has gone before. The Sun Does Shine, How I Found Life, Freedom and Justice by Anthony Ray Hinton. New York Times bestseller, Oprah's Book Club, 2018, winner of the 2019 Moore Prize, finalist, for the Dayton Peace Prize 2019. Tell us about this book, which I can imagine, I haven't read it, but the little I've read about it makes me feel that this is something that's going to touch you on a really visceral level.
Yeah, I mean that I did actually hear from Oprah, but I don't follow Oprah very much because I don't watch so much. But I did hear her talk about this, so that's how I became aware of it. And it has the prison. That's that's the Scorpio in me again that is intrigued and to know more about that. So it's this beautiful being, this guy called Ray, or Anthony Ray, is it? Who gets put into jail for 33 and a half years for murder that he didn't commit, and he couldn't even have committed. I mean, his
alibi.
Strong. He was nowhere near that person that got killed, and it was obvious and had all the evidence. And just because he was black and he was poor and he was in the South, and it took, I think, 18 years till he found a lawyer that really was totally behind him, and who had also helped many other people. And then it took another 12 years for that lawyer to get him out. Like, even though he was totally, and it just breaks your heart. That's part of the story. But he, initial, of course, anger, despair, like shutting off, like being like basically suicidal, from that phase. Pretty quickly he realized he could help people. Actually, first he realized that he could just have this total kind of freedom in his mind, and how he could travel in his mind anywhere. So he started having relationships for 5 years with Sandra Bullock or Hilary Swank or whatever, broke up with one, but then for 5 years he was with the other, like really long, big, huge dream worlds that he traveled in. And then he realized that he could help the other prisoners, and created this book club in prison. But then also all these incredible transformations for a guy who was from the Ku Klux Klan to become his best friend, who was, things like that. So, not seeing each other first. I'm giving way too much away here. I'm so sorry. But anyway, it just is so touching how how compassionate and also when you see him now, he's just, there's no bitterness or no anger, or it's just this it seems like a compassionate being, and to lose or to sacrifice 33 and a half years of your life. But then again, that was the experience that his soul chose, and that he most probably signed up happily for before he came and said, let me do that. I'm going to take that part, and then of course, and how much he can transform with that now, how many people's lives, and bring compassion And so yeah, so it's a good story because it's it's a real life story, and it's very, very humbling. My God, it's very humbling.
And I've just realised as you're speaking there, you used a word that tells me that, we started off saying there was a theme running through this, and it was, death and the dark and the light, etc. But really, it is about transformation, isn't it? Every single book, there's somebody has transformed in some way in every single book.
I mean, if you have a spiritual book club, I don't think you can get away without transformation in your books.
That's true. Absolutely. So maybe it's not just death. Maybe it's this Scorpio. I mean, Scorpio is about transformation. Yeah. Wow. I think that is one of the, I love every single list that I get because I'm always, wow, look at this one, and gives me an insight into the people. Yours was a real surprise for me, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to get some of these books. What I want to do, because I know that we are a little bit tight on time tonight, and I'm sure there's people here who want to ask you questions. I'm just going to very quickly ask you two things. One is that we always ask our guests to come up with a few keywords that describes them. And obviously most people put, what they do for a living. I'm a musician, I'm an artist, or whatever, an author, in, the sort of thing they'd put in their bio. But what I'm really looking for are those little quirky, personal, humorous things that someone might describe themselves as, or your best friend might say, oh, you're such a tree hugger, or something like that. Are there any keywords that you would give us that tell us a little bit about who Deva is?
Oh my God. I would just, I mean, love comes, and I don't know how we want to package love, and twinkle in the eye, and a sense of wonder, and a little girl. But I couldn't put it in a sentence or in one, in one word.
Okay, you don't need to put it in a sentence. We just put it into, we'll put it into a few nouns there, a few descriptors of you. I love the little girl and the innocence that goes along with that. And the other question is, if you were asked to recommend just one of your books to someone who is looking to pursue a spiritual path, to open their mind a little further, which out of these would you recommend?
Just one.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be Journey of Souls, because then they wouldn't be able to stop after that. Because the Sequat one, this one is so amazing, but maybe it's too much for the beginning. So maybe
start with Journey of Souls. Well, that's going to take you to a place where you have to see the world differently. And you're right. You said at the beginning you love books that stretch, shift our perceptions, shatter beliefs, and that one would certainly do it. Good one to start with. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, what we're going to do now is open it up for questions. We have about 11 minutes. Sharon, have you got some questions for us?
Let's see. Yeah, I have one that says from Jane. It says, I love that you said, look for the practical in your book choices versus the philosophical. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, just that I just don't have a philosophical mind that much. So I space out kind of when I read too theoretical books. I have read one that's called Disappearance of the Universe, Gary Renard, which was really, it's a big book, and I somehow made it all the way through. It was kind of on the edge of that, and I was so close to putting that, but it just doesn't keep me there. I've judged myself for it, that I'm not philosophical enough, or I don't know, exalted enough, or whatever the word is. But it's just, I'm just very, just like that little girl, I just need something that I can feel, like And I think it's maybe a little bit like, you know, the stories in India with the gods and the goddesses, you know, that's all packaged in beautiful stories that keep us engaged and are easy to remember. And it's not like a treatise on the qualities of Ganesh or something, you know, but it's a story that then helps us, you know. So that's my pathway. It's not everybody's, but for me, that's the.
You know, I don't think you do have to be philosophical. I mean, you're a Scorpio. I wouldn't expect you to be philosophical. You've got that, you know, that Taurian balance there, that you're somebody who just wants to get into it, into the practicality of it, and into the fundamentals of it.
Just for the Akashic records, I'm Aries with Scorpio rising. So it's the
Scorpio rising. Okay, well, yeah, that's how you appear to the world. Yeah, Aries. I don't think Aries are particularly philosophical either.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so, you know, don't beat yourself up over that one. I wouldn't. Sharon, any more?
I know Annalisa wants to ask questions.
Annalisa?
Waiting for her to type it. Yeah.
I don't know whether Lisa wants to make a comment, as we brought her name up a few times and one of her books is in your list. Maybe she can go away and see if she can get a conversation going with a few people we might like to hear from, like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Oh, yes.
Annalisa, sorry, I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
Anyway, dear Deva, which book or writings inspire you? Do you get inspired while you read?
Sorry, I don't get the question. I thought I was just talking about the books.
Yes. Yeah, I think to a degree you were. Is that an earlier question that was posted before?
I mean, in your music.
Oh, in your music.
Yeah, that's somehow it's kind of a bit of a separate world somehow. I think the music that happens, you know, with in the music and with Miten, playing with Miten, and it's not that I have insights while I read, or anyway, I haven't even composed. I'm really not a composer as such anyway, a music composer. So those two worlds, what I read hasn't really consciously affected the music that I would be aware of it, you know. But obviously my whole life is I live with those glasses on. I feel like I think about death, or I feel death all day long, you know, like it's just with me all the time. And in a really nice way. I always like to say I'm passionate about death. I think it's just going to be such a great gift for all of us to look forward to when it happens. And yeah, so it definitely will come out in my voice. It will come because it's just me, you know, but it's not a conscious thing.
Do you play music when you read?
No, I cannot. It's difficult for me. It's distracting.
Yeah. I can't play music. I can't play a song. I can't play anything with words, but I can play, you know, chanting or just music. If it's got words, it's too distracting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we may have another question there, Sharon. Sharon, have we lost you?
Sorry. Lisa said she would talk to you. Do you want me to unmute her? Or do you want to have her ask a question?
Lisa, fine. Are you okay with that, Deva?
Great.
Lisa, yeah, sure. Unmute Lisa. We've got a couple of minutes before we have to bring it to an end, but by all means.
Okay. Mute her just 1 second.
Actually, Lisa and I are going to do a Facebook live talk next week, where we're just going to open the space for somebody to come through to shine light onto whatever it needs to be shown.
Wow, is that going to be on your Facebook Live page?
Yes, yes.
Okay, what day and time, do you know?
13th of March at the same time where we started.
Okay, well, we will definitely share that one around and join you. That would be an interesting one. Hi, Lisa.
Hi everybody. Hi. Thank you guys for doing this. It was beautiful. And I have a few things written down, Deva. A few books I'm going to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? Did she ever come? She never came through.
She has never come, but that was fascinating what you said. So who knows now? Yeah.
Yeah, watch out for her. Invite her in.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I will.
Yeah, so it's 13th of March and at whatever time we just started the same.
Which was 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, good. Lisa, anything you want to mention before we bring this to a close?
Gosh, I think the books that Deva mentioned were absolutely beautiful. My favorite is Journey of Souls. Billy Fingers is second. So Deva, we're right on. And there's a few I haven't read, so I'm excited to read them now. And I love the Sigmund. I can never pronounce the names right, but that one is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I love those books. Yeah. And the ones I haven't, I will certainly get to. The Osho one sounds fascinating. So that's on my list now.
Well, we'll also ask any participants today to read your book and then give us their feedback.
Yes.
Love that.
Good. Well, Deva, it's been a real joy to have you talking about your books. It's nice to have a different kind of subject for a change, isn't it? And we've really enjoyed hearing about them.
Thank you so much for creating this. I was really... And I'm happy I don't have to write because you first wanted to have a blurb about it.
I know. We are inviting a few people who are really busy to come on and just talk about them, and then we'll put together the write-up afterwards based on the things that you said. But I really want to encourage people to go to your website and look at your Medicine of Mantra series, which you and I had a discussion about, I think, last year. And I love that series because I am so into the healing power of sound.
Yes.
Are you going to do any more?
You know what? I was just a bit distracted because I saw a question. Somebody saying, is it next year? Because we are in May. I think I said 13th of March.
Oh, okay.
I actually meant next week. I know it. Just see it's May already. So
13th of May. Okay, so that'll be the 13th of May. Yeah, and I'll send out a reminder as well to people. What day is the 13th? Is that the Wednesday? Yeah, that.
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday. So on Monday, I usually send out a note to people about the upcoming guests. So I'll make sure that people also get a note as a reminder to go on Wednesday to take part in your event with Lisa. So thank you everyone for being with us today. Thank you very much, Deva. We will have this edited and shared next week. So if you missed anything, if you want to rewatch it, it will be posted around on our Facebook pages, on the website. It'll be all over the place, so you'll be able to find it. Thank you for being with us. And next week we'll be back with Iyanla Van Zandt, who actually couldn't complete the interview that she was going to do a few weeks ago because of technical hitches. So we're running that next week, and it will be 2 hours later than normal. So again, I'll send a note out about that. Thank you, Deva. Say hi to Meetin.
Yes, I'll pass it on. And all love to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.